my presentation today is about autumn colors in trees. Why trees express bright autumn colors? And I think this is an interesting topic because it's something that everyone has seen, these colors. But also most of us really think about if these colors mean anything. We will talk that in this talk. First, however, I'll tell you a little bit myself. I am an ecologist, and I also do a bit of genetics. And I work for the Norwegian Institute of Bioeconomy Research. Mostly, I am the director or station manager of a research station far north in Norway. This is a picture of the research station in summer. Where this research station is positioned. And that it's real far north. It's in the Arctic. It's 70 degrees north and east. Far up the circle. Station in winter, lots of snow here, long winters. It's completely dark a couple of months in the winter. And then we have midnight sun. Sun all the time, there is never night. Right now, night anymore here in Norway, in northern Norway. The final picture of the station with this one called Northern Lights, which is very popular to come here to watch. It's a typical Arctic but also Antarctic phenomenon that you can see here around this research station. This is a picture from the station as well. Well, let's get to the topic, and why am I, as a researcher, interested in autumn colors? And when I started, most people never really think about these trees express bright colors. But well, most people think that they have no specific reason, actually. But 20 years ago, we started to look more into this. And at that time, I'm a researcher. I was doing my PhD at the University of Oslo. And then actually I started to work with autumn colors in the tree species that you see here in this picture, namely birch. And how I became interested in autumn colors. So, here's for you. What is shed their leaves in autumn? Is that really a question? What do you think? Let's think about it. Plus 10 seconds among you guys. Is this really the same question? What? No. It's not the same question. These are really two different scientific questions. One question is why trees shed their leaves in autumn, and this is actually well understood. And why do trees express or have autumn, bright autumn colors often, reds and yellows and so on? Well, why that is not so well understood. And think that when I asked the question and alternatives, you can have 1 minute in each, and then maybe one from each class try to send an answer back to me, see how many of you know. The question is, why trees shed their leaves in autumn? Is it because they have to, or should grow new leaves because new leaves are more efficient to capture sun's energy and produce food than leaves are? Or if trees, they don't have any use for leaves in the winter? Or is it a strategy to survive climate, harsh conditions? I'll give you 1 minute now, and when I say that the time is up, maybe you or those of you who want to can send me your chat, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, 1 minute from now. The question number is the correct answer. That's right. And this is not secret. It's quite. It's been reason for a long time. And let me see. Here you see it. The trees do that. They have to take leaves off in the winter time because this is more efficient for them. It helps them to survive better without leaves than they do with leaves. So this is a condition. So the text on this slide is small, but it gives some perspective on this question. What I said is taken from a magazine, and it's a simple answer. And it's many trees that are leaves in autumn as a strategy to survive climates. It's actually common across the hemisphere, or also in northern areas. And cold, of course, in these areas. But it's also the case that tree species in warm climates sometimes shed their leaves. In those cases, it's usually to serve water. It's a preparation for survival in the best season. So that's not only because of the cold, but in some areas, it's because of the drought, of the conditions that occur in certain periods of the year. Trees that don't do this, don't shed their leaves, they have special kind of leaves, like needles and so, or some even have like frost liquid inside their leaves. But typically, they're like needles, and they're really resistant. A wax, a cuticle that protects them from cold and water evaporation. Other trees are green all year round, typically live in warmer, nicer climates. It's established that shedding leaves is a strategy for surviving harsh climates, whether it's cold wintertime or whether it's dry season in some areas. Yes, that's fine. But about the colors, why do leaves change color? It's a side effect of leaf senescence, of the fact that are about to die? Well, a text from a scientific paper that is called Classification of a Hypothesis on the Evolution of Autumn Colors. It basically says that pretty recently, actually, that colors in trees had no particular function. They were exposed as the trees gradually retracted their chlorophyll and prepared, but no particular function. It was not important for trees, and this was actually the truth that was presented in most textbooks, even in schools or universities. But it might trees actually have some benefit from these bright colors? Do we know? Do we have here? Well, we don't know exactly why trees express bright autumn colors, but we do believe that they function, that they are important for the trees, that it's a coincidence, it's not just something that happens that just looks beautiful, but it has purpose. And why do we do that as researchers? Well, reasons actually. I'll give you now from this slide a little bit. And the reason why researchers, myself and many others, believe that autumn colors have what we call adaptive functions, that they have a specific benefit for the trees, that give them an advantage to survive and reproduce in nature, is, for example, the fact that some autumn colors are actively produced in autumn. It says, and I will show you this later, that colors just appear because the green is taken back into the leaf, not the tree, as the tree prepares for winter. No, this is not true. Some of these autumn colors are actively produced by the trees right before they shed their leaves. In addition, quite variation between individuals of same tree species in both the timing of when it changes the color and also how strong the colors of these are. This variation suggests that the trees, they have different strategies. They invest differently maybe in producing some of these colors. So this is a clue that there be some variation related to variation in survival, variation in reproduction. Of course, it makes it important for the trees to express these colors. In fact, also that among all the different tree species in the world, it's not all species that express autumn colors. In fact, you have some species that hardly express any autumn colors at all, while other species express strong autumn colors. So actually, a different need among different tree species to express strong colors. And finally, that because some of these trees seem to actively produce these bright colors in leaves just before they are shed, well, that means that there could be some costs in doing that. It's not free to produce these bright colors. In terms of evolutionary biology, it's not beneficial for anyone to spend energy on something that is not useful for something. Also then, it's real to believe, we think as researchers, that these colors have an important function in the trees. It's not just beautiful and a coincidence as a side effect of winter preparation, but they're produced for a reason that is important for trees. So, now that there's good reason to believe that it's important for some trees to express bright autumn colors. So then we break from this and we'll look a bit on what actually happens in autumn. A bit about what triggers the onset of autumn colors. I will also talk about what affects the strength of the autumn colors. Show you a little bit where the autumn colors come from. And then we will return to why exactly do trees change color in autumn. Not shed their leaves in autumn, but why they change the color before they shed their leaves. And finally, I will make some conclusions. So I have a new now, and 1 minute a bit less, and we'll go on from there. And the question this time is, what main factor that triggers the onset of autumn colors? A, cold temperatures. B, lack of food. Is it lack of water? Or D, short days / longer nights? It seems like this raised some discussions among you guys, because this time all kinds of answers. Many have A, I have C, I have D. At least I don't know if anyone has posted B. Well, that's true, because plants, trees, and other plants, they produce their own food. So if you guys knew that. But from that, I've got all kinds of some, quite a few actually, has answered trees, or the main factor that triggers the onset of autumn colors is cold temperatures, frost, for example. Some answer that it's because of lack of water, maybe because the water freezes and it's not accessible anymore to the trees. And what you have answered that it's because of shorter days and longer nights as the wind approaches. So, what do you think? The right question is actually D. The reason that it's most important to trigger the onset of autocoloration, and actually also the process that eventually leads to the shedding of leaves, is the gradually longer nights and shorter days as the winter approaches. And the reason why this is the most important mechanism is that this is the most reliable clue to the changing season. It's more reliable than, for example, temperature that can go up and down a lot and differ between different years in the same area. But in light conditions, as winter approaches, it's fixed. And also, although there is some variation, all colors come relatively similar each year in a given place. So this is the single most important mechanism for that. The onset, what triggers the onset? But next, then the strength of autumn colors. And this time, I'm not going to give you a question, so you're free to suggest if you have some immediate suggestion that you want to put in the chat, you can do that. But we'll just go on to the next slide. There's a lot of text, but it's taken from a website in the United States, where they have this arboretum with a collection of trees, and they wrote that as determined that anything that cools when frost causes the leaves to change color. That is base. That's not the important factor. It's actually the conditions as they approach winter. Temperature and moisture and sunlight altogether, these are very important to the strength of the autumn colors. Actually, frost and cold temperatures and so make a big difference to the intensity of the colors. So it's said that in many areas that abundant sunlight and low temperatures cause chlorophyll to be destroyed more rapidly. So that means that cool temperatures, particularly if it happens at night, combined with strong sun in the day, causes the formation of more anthocyanins, it says. And anthocyanins, it's a pigment. It's actually one autumn colors is the red autumn color. I will show you that later. So under certain conditions, it's stronger. Could be also that I mentioned here, but this is not a topic that is so much researched on as as for example, why the leaves are shed in autumn. This is well understood, while these things are not so well understood. And with reasons here, some years there are not so much autumn colors, and so they last longer or shorter than in different years. And this typically different climate impacts that do this. So, now we go over the basic biochemistry here, where the autumn colors come from. And I've given some clues to this, but we will go through here so that you get a feeling of how this works in the trees. You do notice that the dominant color of the leaves in summer is green, and a green is green because it contains chlorophyll. It's a pigment in the leaves that captures the energy from the sun, so that the plant or the tree can produce its own food. And when chlorophyll is abundant in the leaves, like it is in summer, it's only abundant, so you don't see what else is inside the leaf. So it's color summer, it's not an autumn color, and it's chlorophyll that causes the green color. And then we have the yellow autumn colors. This is one of the most common colors, and it's typically caused by carotene. It's a pigment that you find, for example, in carrots or in corn. You know this pigment, it's the yellow color. And the interest of this type of pigment, the yellow pigments, are actually present in leaves all in summer. But for the reason that I just told you, because of the dominating green color of the chlorophyll, you don't see these yellow pigments in summer. They're exposed when you start prepare for winter, and it extracts chlorophyll back in itself, and then these yellow colors gradually are exposed so that they become visible to us. So it's carotene. It's also called chlorophyll. It's a really light yellow pigment, and these are typical and common autumn colors that are present all the time, but you don't until autumn. And then you have the red autumn colors. These are maybe even more interesting because they are not present during summer. And what I hinted to you or told you earlier, that some of the autumn colors are actually produced actively by the trees. It happens right before the leaves are shed. So, this pigment is produced by the trees right before the leaves are shed. They're not in the leaves. And this probably has cost to the trees. But the real question then, why change color in autumn? On this Facebook site that I have copied a small square into this, it said that most of the spectacular colors of autumn have actually been in the leaves all summer. However, they have covered up. This is what we just discussed. They've covered the dominant green color of the chlorophyll that helps the plant capture sun energy and produce its own food. But as weather cools and the shorter days settle in, the chlorophyll breaks down and the nutrients are extracted back into the tree, and the yellow color and the autumn colors become visible. But we have learned now that this is not entirely true. Some of the colors are actually produced. So maybe it's better to be more specific. I got a question on the chat, the question is, what is the chemical properties of the substance with red color? That is, why would the trees produce it? Yes, actually, why would the trees produce it? And I'll get to that because there are actually many ideas why the trees would produce this pigment. As you will see, it's not an entirely solved question, but I will come back to that. So I'll wait a little bit before I answer the question. It's from Nikolai, and I will talk about the reason later. This is the point of this talk, so I will tell you. But the real question is, why do the leaves change color in autumn? But maybe we should ask instead, what is the adaptive significance, meaning the benefit for the trees to produce autumn colors? And repeat very briefly, there are reasons to believe that this is adaptive for the trees. It has a benefit for the trees because they're actively produced. There is large variation both within tree species and between different tree species in the timing and magnitude of autumn creation. And as I said, there seems to be a cost associated, because when you produce something, it costs something that is energy that you don't have to do something else. Into the question of Nikolai here, that why would they, for example, produce these red colors in autumn? What is the chemical properties of the pigments that makes it important for the trees to produce these colors? The truth is that scientists don't know this yet. Now, and because of the fact that we've seen today that it's not a coincidence that this happens, research in this area is still so young that we have not been able to agree on one single reason why this is the case. Although chemical properties of the red pigments are well known and so forth, we are not sure how the plants benefit from it. But there are many different hypotheses why this is the case. Basically, it's a hypothesis that can be put in two different categories. And one is that these pigments that are produced actively autumn protect trees against abiotic factors. Probably you have a feeling what an abiotic factor is. It's again climates, harsh weather conditions. So one branch of hypothesis that focuses on this, and the idea is that this has to be produced actively in autumn to help the trees protect against harsh climates in the period when they're vulnerable, when they have to extract all the nutrients back into the tree and prepare for hibernation in winter. Actually, that's one of the reasons suggested by many researchers now, that this helps them to conserve even better than without autumn colors. And the number of hypotheses deals with biotic interactions. Basically, that means that the colors are believed to somehow aid the trees to them against their enemies, typically insects that attack trees or mine through the trees in autumn to put their eggs there. And interesting hypothesis. I will show you an example of this later. The first hypothesis, which is protection against abiotic factors. There are also variants of this hypothesis, but the common is that the colors act more or less as a sunscreen for the leaves in the very critical period when they have to break the chlorophyll and extract all nutrients back into the tree, save up all the energy for the winter. So the then is that this is adaptive because it makes the trees better in preparing for winter than trees that don't have these strong autumn colors. And this also, if the hypothesis is true, should work within species. For example, if you look at a tree like in this picture, other individuals of the same species that don't have these strong autumn colors, they may be weaker, for example. They wouldn't be at collecting back its own energy and maybe more vulnerable to the hard climates. And maybe then, in the end, they would be survivor. They would start the next season in poor conditions and so forth. So that basic idea with the hypothesis focusing on protection against abiotic factors. The against biotic factors is an idea that also have many different variants. But as one example, I'll mention the co-evolution hypothesis. And an interesting hypothesis, and it's actually the same hypothesis that really boosted energy into the research community to start to study the autumn colors, because that hypothesis said that autumn colors is a warning signal to insects not to lay eggs on this plant because the tree has strong chemical defense. If you think about it, this means that if you have two neighboring trees like this, which should the insect put its eggs on? Of course, it would be the one with the weakest autumn colors and signal. And actually, over the years, there are a few studies that suggest that in the trees that express particularly strong autumn colors, they actually have a stronger chemical protection than trees that have weaker autumn colors. Just a little bit here. When I started out in my PhD as a researcher, it was exactly when the famous evolutionary biologist William Hamilton, who worked at the University of Oxford in England, he presented this co-evolution hypothesis. At the time, I was very interested in active coloration in some plants. I mean, camouflage, wall colors. You probably know examples of warning colors from the animal kingdom, like wolves that are black and yellow, or frogs that are red and so forth. They typically are also poisonous or have some kind of defense. And the point of having these strong colors is actually that enemies, they are quicker to avoid them than they would if they have camouflage colors. So it's actually an adaptive strategy that benefits poisonous animals to not be damaged by potential enemies. And Wilton, the evolutionary biologist, has suggested that's also the case in trees. Trees with strong autumn colors, they signal to insects, do not put eggs on me, do not eat me, because I have a strong chemical defense. Did some work in birch trees at that time, and all of this hypothesis is very difficult to test. And nobody really proved that insects or other insects, for example, that attack trees are really able to discern these colors and select trees. It's done many times now that several insects and degree of insect damage on trees and plants are indeed connected to how strongly the autumn color is. So that's two. The truth in this, of course, could be complex. I mean, it's usually never a simple answer. Life is complex, nature is complex. So probably there could be several different answers here, depending on the species, depending on the system, and depending on the situation. So it very well be that Pigment example, especially the red ones, are produced actively, for example, as a sunscreen to protect the leaves, where nutrients are drawn back into the tree to prepare for winter. At the same time, it seems to be some connection here with the defense of the trees against herbivores, against insect attack, and so forth. So, I'll conclude now with my final slide. To summarize, it's that all colors are not without purpose. They probably have an important function. We don't know exactly what it is yet. We need to do more research in this area. It's a relatively new field with energy now, and people are really digging into different hypotheses to try to understand what makes trees benefit from the colors. And this is what it makes it really exciting to be a scientist. You can contribute with ideas. You can contribute with data. Maybe you sitting there, maybe you that will solve this problem will become maybe a researcher in this. And that's the mission. So thanks for listening to me, and I will be happy to take questions now.